Oh, it is set to go.
Great.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We are doing a demo of the LittleSis.org database and our power mapping tool, Oligrapher or Oligrapher. No preference on the pronunciation here. Thanks for being with us. We'll get started probably 2 or 3 after the hour. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks. We got folks rolling in here. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We're going to get started here probably just another minute or so, waiting for a few more people to roll in. Again, this is a open public training, learning how to use the LittleSis.org database and the Oligrapher power mapping tool, both free movement tech tools provided by LittleSis. And we'll be demoing those two tonight. So glad that you're here with us. Just want to acknowledge we will be recording this session. So if you can't stay for the whole thing or you don't want to stress about missing something, don't worry. We're recording it right now and it will be available after the fact. So with that, Manira, do you want to, I think we're good to probably kick off here.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Munira Lakanwala. I work at LittleSis with Jin. Uh, as Jin mentioned, we are going to be demoing the LittleSis database and our network mapping tool, Oligrapher. And we're glad that you can join us. Um, Before we get started on the demo, just a little bit about LittleSis for those of you who might be new to us. So LittleSis is a watchdog research group that specializes in doing what we call power research and power mapping. And what that means is that in our work, we map powerful people and organizations and try to understand networks of power and how the powerful and the wealthy use their money to influence our political system. And so that's a little bit about what we do as researchers. We also are trainers. We work with organizations across our different movements that are challenging corporate power, and we do trainings with these organizations, and we also do these uh, trainings for the public on the ins and outs of power research so that you all can do what we do at LittleSis in your own communities and in your own sort of corners of the movement. So training is a big part of our mission as an organization. And then the reason why you're here today is to learn how to use the littlesis.org database and our power mapping tool, Oligrapher. And those are um, two sort of resources to the movement that Jin mentioned that we provide for free. And so that's a little bit about who we are as an organization. And then a little bit about the history of Little Sis Tech. So the idea for Little Sis um, was germinating in 2008, and we launched the database then as an organization. And uh, the tool is it's a wiki style database that people can sign up for accounts and use for free to do strategic corporate research and track powerful people and be able to share their research with others who are maybe interested in the same people and organizations. Um, then in 2014, we created Oligrapher, which is connected to the LittleSis database, and it's basically a tool for mapping exactly that, the oligarchy, mapping the kind of power elites that we're using the database to track and understand. And because it's tied to the LittleSis database, it's a really great way to take the research that you're doing in the database and turn it into a kind of visual tool for storytelling, for reporting, etc. And then today, we are still continuing to improve on these tech tools and um, use them in our various trainings with organizations as a way to show that this kind of research is really accessible and possible for many people to do, and to really be able to show how we can, just by tracking power, be able to demystify it. Some stats. These might be a little bit outdated even, but over the history of the LittleSis database, we have users have added over 400,000 entities, what we call entities, which are people or organizations, into the database. They they have also people users have made over 1.6 million connections between different entities in the database, and so we'll talk about that when we get into the demo. But creating relationships between one entity and another, and then we have had over 16,000 users sign up since 2008. And then finally, just a couple of questions that are often come up during trainings that we can just share a little bit about this with you now. So in terms of what you can add to the LittleSis database, the kind of the mission or the focus of the database is really um, to track powerful individuals and organizations and the ties between them. So that's really the purpose of the LittleSis database, is to map power and to understand kind of how power is operating. In terms of sourcing, since it is a wiki style database, there are standards for the kind of sourcing that we require when you add a relationship to between entities in the database. And the requirement is that you add a link to a primary source document or a fact-checked news article. So there's a couple of examples listed here of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. So again, a kind of fact-checked news article from a major, news publication is a good source to use. Scholarly articles that have been, again, reviewed, reports, and then, data from different databases that we would consider primary source materials. And then things like LinkedIn are also okay to use, mostly because they are people who are, when you're adding information from someone's LinkedIn profile, that's information that they themselves have added about themselves. So that's an example of a source that is less common, but you might, we would also consider kind of okay to add. Um, and then some things that are not acceptable. So other kinds of wiki databases that might not have the same level of fact checking, like Wikipedia, we don't consider acceptable sources. Although you're welcome to go to the link that or the source provided on a Wikipedia page and go directly to that source to cite your anything that you're adding to the LittleSis database. Other kinds of things that you should avoid using are opinion pieces, blog, blogs, just anything that hasn't been peer reviewed or fact checked in some way. Um, we do monitor the LittleSis database. We have staff that are monitoring the edits that come in, and we try to, catch things that might not be sourced properly or any kind of data that's added to the LittleSis database that's not, yeah, doesn't have proper citation or is just incorrect. And in which case we remove that information. We also encourage users who are looking at the database, looking at profile pages. If you find something that is not cited properly or incorrect, you can flag that for us and we can review that. And then to become an editor of the database, you can see on the homepage that there's a full list of kind of editor levels. If you're interested, if you're not currently an editor and want to become one, we ask that you take one of these trainings and then contact us and we can adjust your editing permissions. And of course, if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and Jen or I will get to them. Okay, so to begin, the LittleSis database is, as I mentioned, comprised of what we call entity pages or profile pages on entities in the database. And like I said, entities can be an individual person or they can be an organization. And by organization, I mean, anything from a corporation or a company to a foundation or a nonprofit entity, and many things in between. But so an organization is really just a group of individuals, and that's one kind of entity page, and then there's individual profile pages. So I'm going to show some examples so that becomes more clear. But those are the basic building blocks of the LittleSis database, and the work that the database does, and the work that you do as editors is to create connections between different entities in the database. So you can certainly, add a profile of someone into the database. You should first search to make sure that that entity doesn't already exist in the database so that you don't accidentally create a duplicate. But after you search the database and confirm that that person isn't in the database, you're welcome to create a new entity in the database. And so I can give an example here. So if I were to type in Mark Zuckerberg and hit search in either this search bar or the one right here, it searches the LittleSis database to see if that entity, if they're it turns up results of the term that you typed in. And so in this case, right at the top, I see that there is a profile page that exists for Mark Zuckerberg. And I also see that there are a number of Oligrapher maps in which the phrase Mark Zuckerberg appears. And so the search bar on the database page is one that you can use to search not just for entity pages, but for things like maps as well as lists that these entities that the entity appears on. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when using the search bar is a great way to get started to get a sense of what's already in the database. Other things that you'll find when you arrive on your dashboard, which is kind of your personalized workspace, is just recent edits that you've made to the database so you can kind of remember since the last time you logged in what's some of the editing that you've done. You'll also find your maps. So your maps are connected to your LittleSis account and can also be, found by just going to your dashboard. A couple of other things up here on the top, some pull down menus. So this explore button will allow you to see what other LittleSis users are up to. And one thing to note is that all of the edits that are made in the LittleSis database are public, are viewable to other people, to other LittleSis users. So that's something to keep in mind as you're editing the database is that, because it's meant to be a resource, wiki style resource for doing power research. The default is that any edits that are made by users are going to be visible to other users. And so, as a user, as a new user, you might be interested in just getting a sense of what other users are doing in the database. You can also under this Explore tab, see some of the maps that have been created by users, as well as lists and tags. So this is a great way to kind of hopefully get familiar with the kinds of research that other people are doing here. Under About Me, you'll find some useful information about the organization and also just about kind of the purpose of the database and our disclaimer, etc. So feel free to look there. There's a couple of things under the features tab as well, a link to our news site, as well as a couple of other resources. One more thing to note is that when you click on your username at the top, you will also be able to go to the settings tab. And here you can do a couple of things. You can set the language for your for the database, so how it will appear for you. So you can change it currently from English, Spanish, and French are the three languages that the database is available in. Then there's also recently a feature that we added to create dark mode. If that is your preference or need, you can do that. And just a few other things, including being able to subscribe to our newsletter. So just wanted to note those. But quickly back to kind of searching the database. So why don't we start by looking at an organizational profile page. Gonna hit search, and I see when I type in Meta, a few results come up, including some network maps. And I'm gonna go ahead and click on this first result that pops up. And here, what we see is an example of one of the many organizational profile pages in the LittleSis database. So this is for the company Meta, which is owned by Mark Zuckerberg and or that Mark Zuckerberg is the CEO of and was previously called Facebook. And as you can see, there's this is an example of a pretty like robust profile page. It's existed in the database for quite a while, and there's quite a bit of research about the company that's been added over the years. So that's something to note is that, you're going to find when you're searching the database for different companies that there's going to be a real like spectrum in terms of how much information is going to be on any given entity page. And that really just has to do with probably a few different factors, including kind of longevity in the database, but also just how much research LittleSis users have done and added about this particular entity. And so this one has quite a bit of information, and so is a good example to show you, again, what an organizational page can look like. And so with an organizational page, one of the first things one of the first subheaders of category are leadership and staff. And so here we have listed, as you can see, almost or 16 sort of pages of leadership and staff information. So this is, again, information added by users who are doing maybe research on who works at the company and who has worked at the company and have added that. Um, Underneath that is a category called owners. And so here you're going to find information about other entities that have some kind of ownership or shares in the company. Under that are a category called board members. And here you'll see listed um, both current and former board members of the company. As I scroll down more, we see some donations. So these are potentially donations that have been made through the company's PAC. The holdings might be kind of subsidiaries or just other companies that are owned by Meta. Um, then we see child organizations, which are often subsidiaries of, and so we see here WhatsApp and Instagram are listed. We see other categories too, like membership. And so this is where you might find information about different trade or industry groups that Meta is a member of. Services and transactions is a category where you can add both services received or made by Meta. So here we see some of the companies that buy ads on Meta listed, as well as companies that like this Blue Jacket Strategies, which may have been hired by Meta, a lobbying firm that they may have hired. So you'll see both kinds of information listed there. And then there's a category for adding kind of more miscellaneous relationships that might not fall into some of these other categories. Um, and yeah, and when we're doing some editing, when I'm showing you how to edit the database, you'll see how you can kind of choose these categories. Um, One thing to note is if you're looking at one of these big profile pages and want to kind of condense some of these categories, you can do that by clicking on um, this little icon here, this kind of collapse icon. Um, Another thing to note here is that you can see when this page was last updated. So you can see that someone edited this page 7 hours ago. And when you're looking at profile pages on LittleSis, it's helpful sometimes to see, when was the last edit made to this profile page. That'll give you a sense of how up to date some of the information might be. So that's just something to keep an eye on. We have some basic information listed here. As well as some external links. So this link right here would take you to Meta's Securities and Exchange Commission filings in the Edgar database. You can also go directly to the Facebook Wikipedia page from here. And then here, what you're seeing is all of the source links that were used to cite the relationships listed on this page. And then you may have noticed that we are, the highlighted here is the relationships tab. And so when you land on a profile page in LittleSis, this is the tab. This is the first tab that appears. Next to that is what we call the interlocks tab. And this is kind of what makes LittleSis a really unique kind of tool for doing this kind of research, is that this interlocks tab can show you how people who work at or are connected to Meta are also connected to other kinds of entities in the LittleSis database. And so this is kind of a really cool way that the database can show you a network map or start to show you the networks around a particular individual or a particular organization. So you might not be surprised to see that Google is at the top here. Um, and so what this is telling us is that people who have positions at Meta also have or have had positions at Google. And then as you go down the list of, you see that there are other kinds of entities. The US Department of Treasury shows up here, the State Department, etc. And it sort of goes in descending order. So as you go further down the list, less and less connections, but a really great tool for understanding the kind of overlap and again the power networks and the interlinks between different entities in the database. And then I'm going to show the data tab, which is just a way of narrowing down some of the information that you see listed on on the relationships tab. And so you can kind of go to the data tab if you're interested, for instance, in just being able to look at the donation and grants relationships on this meta page. And you can kind of narrow that in different ways using different filters. And I believe you should be able to, oh, maybe that's not true. I think that currently you can't download a CSV file of it, but that might just be a temporary thing that has come down. But usually you should be able to download that information into a CSV file off of the LittleSis profile page. So keep an eye on that. We're probably just doing some updates to that. But so this is basically what you'll find on a LittleSis organizational page. I want to show you next what an individual's page looks like. So we looked at Mark Zuckerberg's page, or we did a search for Mark Zuckerberg. And why don't we go ahead and look at his profile page in LittleSis. There's so I mean, the organizational page and the individual page look almost the same with a few differences. So for organizations, the thing that you'll see up top is leadership and staff. For an individual, you're more likely to see, information about their business positions and their board positions. So here, at the top of Mark Zuckerberg's page, we have information about different boards that he sits on, as well as positions that he holds at other organizations, some of his personal donations that he's made, as well as campaign finance donations. And then we'll see some information about maybe some of his more private holdings, as well as groups or organizations or entities that he is personally a member of. On individual pages, there's also categories for adding information about people's really personal relationships. So family shows up here, social relationships as well, where they went to school, because that can often be a interesting kind of piece of power research information that you might want to know about a person. You'll also find information about their personal kind of services and transactions. So maybe information about lawyers and law firms that they employ. And then again, you have this kind of miscellaneous category that allows you to add information that doesn't sort of clearly fit into some of the more standard categories. You also see, you may have noticed that these underneath the names of the entities is like a little kind of blurb, what we call a blurb about what that entity is. And so here you can see that someone's added Facebook founder. If I wanted to edit that a little bit to reflect the company's current name, I might go ahead and, put meta in parentheses and just hit hit return to then be able to add a little bit of an update to the information that's on the page. And to do that, you would just go ahead and click on this little pencil icon. So those are two pieces of kind of information, or two kinds of entities in the database. And as you go to other entity pages, you'll find, a kind of variety of information. I also want to kind of note that, underneath these relationships are these smaller hyperlinks. And when you click on these smaller hyperlinks, what you're able to, where it takes you is what we call the relationship page. And here is where you're going to find the source link that I mentioned that you have to add when you add a relationship to the database. And so here it's listed source link, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this so that you can see, excuse me, you can see that the source that was used to cite this relationship is the foundation or the organization's website. So that's a totally acceptable source for this relationship that, lists Mark Zuckerberg as a co-founder of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. If I, was looking at this information in the database and was like, actually, this is incorrect. There's something here that needs to be corrected. And I wanted to flag that for LittleSis staff to review. I can click on this flag button. If there's information on this page that is just needs to be updated, I can click on update and click just cleaning up. So here I may want to do anything from like add a start date or an end date to change is current, or even add a note here for myself or for someone else who might be looking at this page. So by clicking on that edit button, it allows me to just come in and edit information. One thing that's important to know is that users can't delete information from the database. So someone can't, come and delete any of the information that's in the LittleSis database. If there's something that's incorrect, you can flag it and LittleSis staff can remove it. But that's just one thing to know is like any information that you add to the LittleSis can't be removed by someone else, but it could be edited, it could be updated if that's appropriate. So I'm just going to pause there and see if there's any questions I can answer. Jen, is there anything that you want to uplift from the chat?
A lot of questions about like types of sources that are useful. We're kind of going through that. Just want to remind everyone that this is going to be recorded, so it will be available later along with all of our past trainings. But I think we're good to keep going.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to start editing the LittleSis database. So to do that, we're gonna look at Mark Andreessen, who is a partner at the venture capital firm Horowitz Andreessen. And we're going to go ahead and search for him in the database and maybe update his page. So I did a search earlier today. So you can see, and so can pull up his profile here and show that to you quickly. So there's a few pieces of information that are in his bio that are not currently in the database. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to add that information. There's a couple of board positions listed here that I can show you how to add. So we're going to go ahead and go back to his page. There's two ways to edit the LittleSis database. One way is that I'm going to show you is through the um, through the website itself, through the database. Um, and to do that, I hit this add relationship button. So I want to add Mark Andreessen's um, board position at Coinbase, which is a Bitcoin company, to his profile page. And so to do that, I hit add relationship, and then it prompts me to create a new relationship. So I'm going to type in Coinbase and search the database for that entity. And so um, here's it's a cryptocurrency exchange platform. And as you can see, it pulls up a few results. It pulls up results for Coinbase's pack as well as their investment arm. But I want to choose this first one, which is the the company, the platform itself. And so in this case, Coinbase was already in the LittleSis database, so it pulled up a search result. If Coinbase was not an entity in the LittleSis database, I would have had the option to create a new entity page for Coinbase. But since it already exists, I'm going to go ahead and just move through the next step, which is telling the database what kind of position or what kind of relationship it is that I'm adding. So I'm going to click on position since it is being a board member is a position. It's going to ask me to select a reference. So this is what it's showing me is like existing references. But I actually want to go ahead and pull this URL because that is my source for this relationship. And I'm going to type in company bio as the name of this. And then I'm going to go ahead and click create relationship. And so what you're seeing now is the relationship page again, with the source link that I just added. And right now it's a pretty generic sounding, position. But what I can do is go in to edit and hit just clean up and then type in board member. I can leave off whatever information I don't want to add, but I am going to click is current and is board member and go ahead and click update. And when I do that, as you can see, it has updated that information that's on the relationship page. And when I go to Mark Andreessen's page again, this relationship now appears under board membership. And I can go ahead and put a little star next to it to show that it's an important relationship. You can also unstar it if you want. So that's basically how you edit a profile page or create a relationship using directly through the LittleSis database. Another way that you can edit the database is using a tool that we built called the Chrome Bookmarklet, which is available in the Chrome. If you use the Chrome browser, it's currently only available in the Chrome browser. But so if you do use the Chrome browser, that's great. You can go to the Chrome Web Store and search for LittleSis and be able to pull up this bookmarklet, which allows you to add information to the LittleSis database without necessarily being logged in, on the page itself. So if I was scrolling this page and wanted to just directly take information from this page and add it into the LittleSis database, I can kind of do that by just going to my Chrome toolbar and pulling up this information or pulling up this tab. So I'm going to show you how to do the same thing that I just did on the database using the bookmarklet. I'm going to open it up here. And I want to add this relationship of Mark Andreessen to um, the chairman's task force. This is a position on a task force for the Federal Reserve. And this information, again, also isn't currently on his profile page in LittleSis. So I'm going to type in Mark Andreessen. And might take me a minute to probably didn't spell it correctly. Hmm. Sometimes, let's try this again. I'm just going to actually copy and paste his name here. I might just be spelling something incorrectly. Ah, okay. Must have been me. So when I type in and under entity number one, to add this relationship, when I type in Mark Andreessen's name, it pulls up his profile. It searches the database and finds that there is an entity called Mark Andreessen in the database. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to choose here a description of the relationship that I'm adding. So I'm going to write task force leader, um, productivity and jobs, I believe is, um, and then I'm going to tell the database what kind of relationship this is, which is a position. I'm going to call this a board position, and then I'm going to type in Federal Reserve, which is the um, entity under which this position exists. And there's, as you can see, a number of Federal Reserves for different places. We're going to use the central bank. The Federal Reserve System is listed here. And then I'm going to type current because this information I'm assuming is current because it is on the Federal Reserve website. And the really great thing that the bookmarklet does is it automatically pulls the URL from the page that you're browsing and adds that as your source link, and then also adds a name for the source link. And I'm going to go ahead and now click Add to LittleSis. The information has been added, and I can go now and see that information appearing. And so this takes me to this editing page. If there's, again, more information that I want to update here, I can do that. But once again, I'm just going to show you how when I go to Mark Andreessen's profile page in LittleSis, this board membership now appears. So highly recommend using the bookmarklet if you use Chrome as your, main browsing or research browser. The bookmarklet definitely saves you time. You don't have to toggle between different tabs in your browser. And it's just once you start using it, it makes editing the LittleSis database really, really fun and easy. Again, I'm just going to pause there. That's kind of the end of my demo for the database, and we're going to move into showing you how to use Oligrapher, the mapping tool. But before I do that, just want to see if there's any questions I can take before we move on.
Oh, I think we're doing pretty good here. We're just really again talking about primary sources versus aggregators and secondary sources. And also, I think actually one user has been bringing up, and I think it's good to just remind everyone that while the adage is that everything on the internet is forever, and we should always be aware of that, actually, websites do get scrubbed and disappear. And so, um, one thing that a user was noting was that using tools like the Wayback Machine, or recently we've been using archive.is, I think it is, to preserve websites, web pages. That is a really great tool and a way to ensure that, as Manira was showing, when you're using a primary source, it will stay. It'll stay there, even if something happens on the back end to that website. So those are sort of the areas that we've been talking about here.
Great. Yeah, thanks for taking all those questions, Jen. Um, if you're ready to move us into the Oligrapher demo, I can pass it over to you. You can stop my share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me my share here. Great. Here we go. All right. Right at Mark Andreessen. So great. So I'm gonna just like minimize this. And yeah, so like Manira was saying, have just been going through the LittleSis.org database. And in addition to the database, we have our mapping tool, Oligrapher. Again, as Manira was saying, it stands for oligarchy and graphing. And basically, it's just a way to take all the information that you are putting into the database, like all this information on Mark Andreessen's page. It's great, but it's a lot. And sometimes being able to actually see it visualized is a much better way to ingest the information, and it's a better way to tell a story. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to create a map based on the information that Manera just added to the database to sort of show you how it comes together and all the tools and tricks. And just like with when Manira was talking with the database, if questions come up, throw them in the Q&A. That way folks can like see them. They stick around a bit longer than the chat. You can put them in the chat too, but it's a little bit easier if you use the Q&A. So with that, I am going to navigate over. So we're here logged into my user profile, and I'm on Mark Andreessen. So I'm on the database side of things right now. I'm looking at a profile page. But if I wanted to create a map, there's a few different ways I can do that. But the easiest way is just to go to add here. It's like up here on the top. I'm gonna click add, and you see I'm given a few different options here: entity, list, and map. I want to create a map, so I'm going to click that. And that's going to take me over to this nice template platform, whatever you want to call it here. This is our Oligrapher mapping tool. And so here is essentially a blank canvas. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to title this map so it doesn't get lost. I'm going to call it Andreessen test map. So we'll call it demo map. We're not testing anything here. We're demoing. All right, Andreessen demo map. You can see it shows that I'm creating it when it's created. You see I got my little save button over here to the right. I will note this now and note this often that we do not have autosave yet. So very important to click that save button whenever you can. You start putting stuff on your map. It takes a while. If you don't save and you just happen to refresh or accidentally close it, you can lose it and we can't recover that for you. So be sure to click save. But first things first, we're looking at empty map. So let's get a few what we call nodes on this map. So let's start with Mark Andreessen. So we're going to come over here to our sort of our toolbar that's here down on the left. And we'll go through all of these different things. But first things first is I want to click this. It looks like a big zero here. It says add node. I'm going to open that up. I'm typing in Mark Andreessen. It's taken me a long time to figure out all the E's and the S's in this name. I think I got it now. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm actually searching the LittleSis database for the person that I'm looking for. Now, one of the things that's great about the LittleSis mapping tool that is a little bit different than the database is I can actually create things that will exist only on this map without adding them to the database. So it's a little bit of a sort of a different animal over here. In this case, I'm pulling up Mark Andreessen. He's in the database. I'm going to click Mark Andreessen. And so I've added him here. And if I click on his node, you'll see I have his name, his description that'll pop up. It has the click-through link, which is going to be his littlesis.org profile page that we were just on. I can change if I don't want to be looking at him for whatever reason. I can change his image to just a color. I can change the size if he's going to be the focus of this map, so maybe I make him a little bit bigger. And I can also change the click-through URL. So say I don't want this to be clickable to go back to the LittleSis page. Maybe I want it to go to a different source. I can change that here. But I have changed one thing, which is the size. So I'm just going to leave that for now. And so what I want to do for this map is I want to talk about Mark Andreessen's sort of the conflict of Mark Andreessen having both a position at Coinbase. He's both an investor and has a position at Coinbase, which is a big cryptocurrency platform, and being involved with the Department of Treasury. So say that's the story I'm trying to tell with this map. So I'm going to throw a few other things here to help me do that. I'm going to put his investment firm up here, Andreessen Horowitz. And so you see I've added that node here. And again, because this exists in the database, this relationship between Mark Andreessen and his firm, Andreessen Horowitz, exists already, it's auto-populating what we call this line here, we call an edge. And so it's auto-populating the connection, the relationship between Andreessen and Andreessen Horowitz, and then listing what is listed in the LittleSis database. Now, if I want to edit this, I just click on that edge and say I want to, I just want to say he's co-founder. I don't need all this extra information. So I could say that if he was no longer involved with Andreessen Horowitz, I could make that sort of a dotted line to indicate that it's a past relationship. But for now, I'm going to leave that just like that. And you can sort of play around with this. You can sort of move that edge around a little bit and make your map sort of shaped the way you'd like. But let's get a few other nodes on here. So we go. So we were talking about Coinbase, cryptocurrency exchange. So Mark, he is a board member. So you can see this is the relationship that was just added by Manera. He's also an investor through Andreessen Horowitz. Now, that relationship doesn't exist in LittleSis yet, but let's say, just for the sake of time, I wanted to go ahead and make that connection without editing the database. All you need to do to create another edge between two entities is I would take this Coinbase, drag it over top of Andreessen Horowitz, and let it go. And that creates an edge between these two. And now what I would want to do is edit this edge to reflect what the relationship is. So I'm going to say Andreessen Horowitz is an investor. And then I'm going to put a little arrow on the end there saying that Andreessen Horowitz is investing in Coinbase, not the other way around. And I'll leave that like that. And it's important to note here that when you make edits on your map, while you're drawing from the database, you're not actually editing the database from your map. And so because of that, it gives you just like you can add much more to your map than you would normally be able to add to the database. The database is essentially for individuals and organizations. But if you wanted to add a node that said something like special luncheon, you could add that to your map to so you could represent something like an event or a piece of property, or something like that that is a little bit different if you wanted to just sort of play around, get creative with the different types of nodes you want on your map. But we're not going to do that right now, so I'm just going to highlight that and hit delete, get rid of that. And so now I have this map taking shape. I'm showing Mark Andreessen, board member. He's an investor through Andreessen Horowitz. This is very common for investors that have a ton of money in corporations to also be on their board. The real issue we have here is that he's also connected to the treasury, or not the treasury, the Federal Reserve. Reserve. Pull up here. There. And so now you can see this connection that was added is there. And so this map is a pretty basic one, but it's kind of getting our point across here that Mark Andreessen is both has this conflict of interest. He's involved in advising for the Federal Reserve System while also being a major investor and having a like a financial stake in something that is in a cryptocurrency exchange that has business before the Federal Reserve, has business before the Treasury. And this is actually true of Mark Andreessen in a number of different parts of his business where he has deep investments in surveillance and defense. He also has a position on an advisory board with the department, now what they call the Department of War. So this is a pretty kind of a consistent thing that goes on with this guy. So, but let's say that this is our map for now. I don't like seeing all these empty nodes, so let me actually take this Andreessen Horowitz one. Let's say I want to make it green because that's where he gets all of his money from. Coinbase, let's say I actually want to put their logo in. I actually pulled up, so it says image URL or data. If you're going to use a company logo, we just ask that you find a free one on Wikimedia Commons or something like that. And you can just do copy image address, go into the image URL, put that in there, click update, and that stays there. Again, this is all staying on this map. So again, don't expect when you're editing your map that it's editing the database. It's all staying here. And so I've got this looking pretty good. I'm going to hit save. So this is my map, and you'll see up at the top here, I now have this URL, littlesis.org Oligrapher, and it's got the name. And I can share that out if I want. I can share this map. I can embed this map. There's embed code. If you want to put it on a blog or a piece of writing, you can share this around with folks. But that is just a very basic start of a map. So let's get back into editing from here. So I'm going to click these three little dots on the right. Gonna click edit. Oh, you can see here, this is actually great. Clicking these three dots. I can't edit it right now because it's in view mode, it's in share mode. But if I wanted to make a copy, say I want to keep this as is, but build on it, I can hit clone. I can make a direct copy of it. If I want to export it, I think it's like I get a PDF of it. But for now, let's keep building. So we'll hit edit. And you'll see here that what it's done is actually offered me to edit annotations. And this is actually a great place to go with maps like this. So we have essentially two versions of maps on LittleSis. One, just these sort of static maps. I'm going to click out of this for a second. These sort of static maps that look just like this. It's just a visual. And then we have these maps where I think this is the button for it. No. Where's my button for it? No. Uh-oh, how do I get back to it? I'm just going to get out of it and then get back in. Let's get back into present, hit edit.
You see that little, yeah, right there.
That one, oh, if I just kept clicking. Yeah, so your little toolbar, this is a great lesson. Don't get frustrated. Just look at your toolbar to the left and click down till you find what you're looking for. But so yeah, so we have the static map, just the visual, and then annotations will basically allow you to make slides. So let me show you that. So first thing I'm going to do is hit add annotation, and I'm going to write a title. So basically you're going slide by slide. Let's say Mark Andreessen is a billionaire. And whatever I want to show up on that slide, all I have to do is just click. Oh, let's see, actually, I have to hold down Command click and it'll turn it yellow. And so that lets me know that when this slide is up, that's what I'm going to be seeing. And so let's say that's my first slide. Next slide, we'll say uh, his firm is big into crypto. And we'll say, all right, so I'm going to hit Command and I want to highlight all of these. I can highlight the edges. Am I getting that? Yeah, getting that. That guy doesn't want to highlight. I've got a few there. There we go. Sometimes it can be hard to get your mouse in the right spot, but we'll leave it there for now. So his firm is big into crypto. And then last one, say, this is a bit of a conflict. And we'll do Mark Andreessen, Federal Reserve. There we go. All right. And you'll see here, I'm just putting the top lines in, but there's actually a whole text box you can put here. So we'll just say like recently added to advisory board. All right. And so I've got basically 3 slides here lined up. I'm going to hit save and I'm going to go to present just to see what it looks like. And so what you can see is now I've taken the static map and I basically made it so that I can walk through the map and tell a story. And so I'm saying Mark Andreessen is a billionaire. Oh, I accidentally got an extra E in there. My bad, Mark. I'm going to hit next. His firm is big into crypto. Hit next. It's a bit of a conflict of interest that he's at the Federal Reserve System. And so this is actually, this is a relatively tiny map, but, I'm still trying to tell a story with it. This is extremely helpful when you develop really big, elaborate maps, because sometimes, much like looking on a profile page, you can kind of get lost in all the information. And it can be helpful to your reader or whoever you're sharing things with to just sort of like walk them through the different pieces of the map so they can sort of follow your research flow there. But I'm going to X out of this. I'm going to get, so I've X'd out. I can, it's taking me back to the static view. I can hit show annotations if I want and scroll back through that, but I'm going to X out. I'm going to take us back to our edit tab and just show a couple more things here that we have. So we've already gone through the, adding the edges in, adding in the color or a logo. Again, if I wanted to make, if he was no longer a board member, I could make it look like it's in the past. If I really wanted to emphasize a connection, I could scale it up. So scale it up as big as you want. There's just all kinds of ways that you can show, sort of emphasize and de-emphasize or draw attention to different parts of your map as you're building it. Let me see what else we have here. So we have text here. That's a great one if we want to just add a little bit of something right, like directly onto the page. So if I wanted to say billionaires doing billionaire things right there on the map, then I can sort of move that over. That way it just allows me, instead of just keeping all the text to the slides, I can write something that might be, let's just say it's like true for the entirety of the map, Or if you want to label different areas of your map, that's a good way to do that. I'm going to go down here and show a couple of settings that you have. So this is very important to note that, LittleSis, we're all about sharing our data. Again, the database is completely open for people to use and to look at, and that includes our maps. And that includes user maps. So it's very important if you're working on something and you don't want it to be visible to others, if you don't want it to be findable to others. So for instance, as Manira was going through the database, when she was looking people up, it not only showed what was in the database, it also showed maps that showed those entities. If you want to not have your map be coming up at search, you got to set it to private, but you have to initiate that. Everything starts public. So make sure that you click, if you want it private, you see that little lock comes on there. Um, we automatically, again, in the interest of sharing, we allow all maps to be cloned. So that means someone can make a copy of your map. If you don't want that to happen for whatever reason, you can just unclick that. You get to decide what the default view is. So this map defaults to story mode, meaning that when I share that URL, it's going to share the version of this map that has the slides on it. But I can default it to explore only mode, meaning that it will only show this view, but you could access the slides. And you can choose to do like only one or the other. And so there's a few other things you can check if you want your user to be able to move different parts of the map around, drag edges, move nodes around, sort of play with it a little bit. That won't affect things on your map. They won't actually be editing your map. But it's fun to let people play around with these things. Or you can be a real stickler and you like the way it likes, and just keep it that way. Something that I like to do is actually hit that source links button. So you can actually select to show source links. And so at the end of your map, in the slides, it'll show a whole list of all the sources that have been used from the LittleSis database to create this map. Or if it's showing the static map, it'll just show all the sources along the side. So let me just save that and go to present here, showing annotations. And so here, so now where we did have 3 slides, you can see now because I put show sources, it's showing these 4 sources that have been used on the back end to create this data. And then one last thing that I'd like to show is this cool tool, which is for map editors. So this is a relatively recent thing. I mean, just the last few years is being able to create maps along with other editors on the database. So if you're working with someone and you want to both be able to edit the same map, you can just add them to your, so let me see if I can add you, Manira. So added there. And then that person will then be able to, you need to use their LittleSis username, will then be able to work on this map alongside you, and it will show by all of your names, however many folks you add. I'm not sure what the limit is. It might just be one. But definitely encourage utilizing that, especially if you have a big project going. But that is it for now. Again, if there's any questions, I'm happy to walk back through anything else.
There's a couple of questions. Thanks so much, Jen. So you showed how to move a map from being default public into private. Would you mind showing people where they can find, so even for private maps, there is a URL that is kind of like a secret private URL. Would you mind showing people where they can find that?
Yes, let me see if I can. Oh, yeah. So what you want to do is hit this share. And so it says this map is private, but others can view it using the secret link. You click that. And so that's what you will share. So you can see there's some key difference here in the URL. The main URL is pretty straightforward, has the map number and the map name. This one will have share and it has sort of like a an alphanumeric gibberish. That's the one that you'd want to share for the private. The other one just will not open for the other person, the person on the other end.
Great, thank you. And then there was a question about how you might add information from the database into your map. So one thing is a kind of a newer feature that if you go back into editing mode and click on Andreessen's node, you'll see the add connection here.
Hmm.
If you want to click on that and just show how you can pull up different categories to just automatically add to your map.
Yep. Yeah, this is a great one. Thanks for I skipped over it, but let's get into it. So let's say we want to add a bunch of other, for these big profile pages when you just want to add a ton of data. You can go through, and this is essentially a way, like a mini view of Mark Andreessen's entire profile page. So let's say I want to add in his Meta, I want to add in Hewlett Packard, I want to add in his whole Doge moment that he had. I want to add in Netscape because at one time he was an internet prodigy. I want to in those things like that. You can do that really quickly by hitting that add connections. And you see here how it is populating this map. And it's a great way, again, especially if you've been adding a ton of data to the database, to get it on there, especially if you're doing like campaign finance research. So you can see here, I can hit add connections and hit donation, and it's pulling up all of his different donation data. And so I could add in all kinds of like different donation data that maybe I have added or others that have added. And it's just a great way to kind of pull a bunch of info in very quickly.
Great. And then you can show if you want to just like click on one of those edges that and delete one of them. So that, some of these connections, there's like multiple edges. If you want to clean up your map a little bit, you can kind of just click on them and delete. And then the last question was about finding interlocks between nodes on your map. So maybe you want to show that as well.
Yes. So what we can do, let me see if I got it here. So let's look for interlocks between Meta and Andreessen Horowitz. I think those are going to be our best bet here. So I'm going to click Meta and I'm going to hold down, let's
I
move
believe you
that.
hit shift.
Is it shift?
Yeah, for the two
Okay.
nodes that
Okay,
you.
there we go. So I click Meta to highlight it, then held down shift and clicked Andreessen Horowitz. That allowed me to select both nodes at the same time. And then I'm going to go over to my, again, to my little bar here on the left. You can see where there's the two interlocked rings, hit interlocks. You can see it's select node is telling me what to do here. I've got the two selected. I'm clicking get interlocks and it's telling me which ones they are. So I can select Mark Andreessen. He's already on there, and Instagram, which has been put on there too. Which that's an interesting one. It didn't connect to Andreessen Horowitz directly, but that is a investor. So I'm going to do the thing where I create the connection there. But that's a great way. Let me just get this guy's calling me trouble here. But that's a great way to say if I, did want to add a bunch of connections that I know exist between two entities really quickly. That's another great way to do that. Let me see if I can get a different one here. Let's try Hewlett. It works really well for when you have two larger entities. So this is saying they found 10 interlocks between Hewlett Packard and Meta. Um, and so I can like kind of toggle through here. There. I just hit the plus and that added everything at once. So You can see how unruly it can get all at once if you don't go through and select one by one. But this is, let me get some of my other nodes out of the way here.
Yeah, you can also hit the back button if you decide that that was a
Yeah.
mistake.
Happy
Fun.
accidents. But you can see here that, so this is basically all the interlocks that you would find in the LittleSis database between the two of these entities.
Or you can hit the undo button that's at the bottom of the toolbar.
Let's see. Yeah.
I think that is all the questions that have come in. Um, if you want to
Great.
close this out.
Great. Okay. All right. So yeah, well, thanks everyone for joining us here. Let me get this up there. A few other resources in addition to the LittleSis.org database and the Oligrapher power mapping tool. So we have our Map the Power toolkit. That's at mapthepower.net. That's a great toolkit for basically getting started in doing power research. So again, doing the research that you would do to actually add data to the LittleSis database. And it can show you how to research corporations, individuals, nonprofits, all types of different entities there. Definitely recommend checking that out. We also have our YouTube channel. You can access this. Actually, I think I put the website in a couple of times, but if you go to the littlesis.org/training, you'll see if you just click our past trainings there, it'll take you right there. You can look at all of the old LittleSis trainings that have been added. We basically record everything and throw it up there. So definitely a great way to revisit this training and others. And then sort of lastly, we have our newsletter. We are doing trainings. This year we've done a public training, I think, every month. And we have our research tools for organizers series starting in September. So the newsletter is just like a great way to stay up to date on research that we're putting out, but then also these training opportunities like this one. And we go into different issues, different topics, different tools. So just recommend signing up if you're down. We don't send out too much stuff, I promise. Um, and then lastly here, before we let you go, as we've said, the littlesis.org database and Oligrapher are completely free, open tools that we have built and maintain, and they are free for all to use. They are not free for us to maintain and build and create. So we appreciate any support that you might be able to provide, especially if you found this training useful, if you find the tools useful. Um, we invest a lot in these trainings and in these tools and these resources to help build stronger, more aligned and more equipped movements. And so any support that you throw our way will go to good use and to more content like this. So we appreciate it. We appreciate you being here. And thank you so much for, yeah, for being here, for spending your evening learning how to use our stuff. If you have questions, reach out. If you find broken links, flag them, let us know. We want to know, we want to fix it. And with that, we will let you go. Thanks so
Thanks so
much.
much, everyone. Take care.